Let's troubleshoot why your STM32's USB isn't recognized when you're trying to upload your FFT code. This can be frustrating, but we'll go through the most common causes step by step. First, ensure your STM32 is correctly connected to the computer via a USB cable. Check both ends. Make sure the cable is securely plugged into both the STM32 board and your computer's USB port. Try different USB ports on your computer. Sometimes a port might be malfunctioning or not supplying enough power. 2. Next, let's verify the USB drivers. Your computer needs the correct drivers to communicate with the STM32. If you're using a Windows machine, go to Device Manager, search for it in the Start menu, look for ports, COM and LPT, and see if your STM32 appears there. If it shows up with an error, yellow exclamation mark, you'll need to install or update the correct USB drivers for your specific STM32 microcontroller. These drivers are often available on the manufacturer's website, ST Microelectronics. For Mac OS and Linux, the process is slightly different. You might need to install specific USB serial drivers depending on your STM32 chip and operating system. 3. Now, let's look at the STM32's configuration. Make sure that your code correctly initializes the USB peripheral and that the correct USB mode is selected, e.g., Virtual COM port. A common mistake is forgetting to configure the USB clock or incorrectly setting the pin configurations for the USB signals. Carefully review your initialization code, comparing it to the example code provided in the STM32 HAL or LL libraries. Double-check your pin assignments to make sure they are correct for your board's USB interface. 4. Power issues are another potential culprit. Sometimes, insufficient power prevents the USB interface from functioning correctly. Your STM32 may require external power, especially if the USB port isn't providing enough current to both power the microcontroller and drive the USB communication. Check if your board has an external power connector, and if so, provide power from an external power supply. Also consider using a powered USB hub, as some computer USB ports might deliver insufficient current. 5. Finally, if none of the above solves the problem, consider reflashing the bootloader. A corrupted bootloader can prevent the USB from functioning. You can usually reflash the bootloader using an ST-Link programmer or a similar tool. Consult your STM32's documentation on how to properly do this. Make sure to use the correct bootloader for your specific STM32 chip. After reflashing the bootloader, try uploading your FFT code again. If the issue persists, further debugging steps may be needed, such as carefully examining the code for errors and verifying the proper setup of the hardware. Remember to consult the relevant datasheets and documentation for your specific STM32 microcontroller and development.